Hello and welcome to the Three Quarter Slot Podcast. I am your host, Sean Kernahan, and today we will go ahead and do things a little bit differently. On Monday, we had the full tournament announced for the NCAA baseball tournament. So I figured this week what I'll do is instead of doing the 9 inning format and things like that, I am just going to go ahead and break down each and every regional, pick a winner for each regional, go through some of the top storylines, go through some of the top prospects, and like I said, then make that pick. With that, what I'll end up doing is I'm going to use the D1 Baseball bracket challenge page, and what I'll go ahead and do is I will make those picks along the way, so you guys can follow along and see what we are doing and how I'm picking that. But let's dive straight in with the number 1 seed overall in the country. In many places, they were wire to wire, number 1 in the nation, UCLA. They are the 1 seed again. They're still number 1 in the country. They won the Big Ten tournament, not without its questions. Was there a hit by pitch? Was it not to walk off Oregon in extra innings? They also had to, they had a walk off against USC. Were pushed late against, I believe it was Purdue. They did not have the cleanest of tournaments, but they ended up coming away with that win. They are the 1 seed. Also in their bracket, in their regional, Virginia Tech's the 2 seed. Cal Poly, winners of the Big West, is the 3 seed. And St. Mary's is the 4 seed. Taking a look at this, the big storylines is going to be, is Logan Redeman healthy? There was reports that he would be available in the bullpen in the Big Ten tournament. The real question is how healthy is he? Is he ready to go ahead and start? Does UCLA even need him to start in this regional? They got a pretty favorable regional, as they did this year for the first time, seed the top 32. So this is Virginia Tech being the quote-unquote weakest of the 2 seeds, but it's not without its challenges here and some quality opponents. But I do think UCLA can get through this relatively easily. Let's take a look at the top prospects. Rock Chalowski, obviously, the likely 1-1 pick come July. Levi Lavu, Will Gasparino, Roman Martin, Dean West, Cal Randall, and the aforementioned Logan Redeman, all top prospects with UCLA. Some prospects to look at for Virginia Tech. You got Griffin Stieg and Ethan Ball, a 2028 prospect for Virginia Tech. Cal Poly has Alejandro Garza, and St. Mary's is Jacob Johnson. All guys worth keeping an eye on in this year's draft. Ultimately, though, when it comes to this pick, this round, it got to go UCLA. They will end up winning this. Now, with the D1 Baseball challenge that we have here on the screen, it does have you pick the runner-up in each regional, and I do like that we get to go through that, because what it will allow me to do is talk through some of this regional a little bit. I believe Cal Poly ends up as the runner-up. Before the season started, I had them as the potential Murray State this year, that unexpected, under-the-radar team on a non-power conference that makes a run. They were my pick there. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Cal Poly to be the runners-up. Obviously, in the UCLA, the Los Angeles Regional, I don't see them making it through and making a run to the College World Series. But I expect them to at least be runners-up in this region. On the other side, lining up against them on the super regional side of things will be the Morgantown Regional, which is West Virginia, Wake Forest, Kentucky, and Binghamton. Wake Forest, probably the biggest surprise host. They Um, Runners up in the Big 12, Arkansas, the team that went to the SEC title game, did not end up getting picked as a host. That may be the biggest host non-host debate and drama, so to speak, when it comes to this bracket. So West Virginia, the final host, they're in Morgantown. Plenty of debate as to whether or not they should be the host, but they did, and they actually got a favorable draw. They have Wake Forest as the 2 seed, not favorable. Wake Forest is a very good team. Kentucky, which is the 3 seed, and really a surprise to even be in the tournament. They lost the first round of the SEC tournament. They were on the bubble, depending on who you're looking at and following along with. They were in, the last 4 out, last 4 in, last 4. It just kept going back and forth throughout the weekend. Ultimately, they were a team that got in over Mercer, who, again, maybe the team that had the most gripe when it comes to being left out of the tournament overall. But Kentucky does get that 3 seed, and then Binghamton gets the 4 seed. In terms of prospects to keep an eye out for, Max Yeel and Dawson Montesa for West Virginia on the mound this year. Gavin Kelly, the catcher, a potential top 5 pick in next year's class, the 2027 class, is the star player there for West Virginia. Wake Forest has just a ton of depth, as they normally do. Duncan Marston, Matthew Dallas, Blake Morningstar in the rotation that are eligible this year. You got Dalton Wentz and Cade Lewis in the lineup. For next year's class, they've got Chris Lavonas, Cam Bagwell, Troy Dressler. And then they got freshman J.D. Steiner, 2028 eligible, who has seen a lot of playing time and a really key cog there for Wake Forest. Going through that list of players is going to be important here, but we'll go ahead and run through some of the other names first. For Kentucky, you got Tyler Bell, who former second-round pick by the Tampa Bay Rays, ended up choosing Kentucky instead of signing, and will very likely be a first-round pick this year. Jackson Jelkin, well-traveled, super projectable righty. He's their ace. Owen Jenkins, a freshman but be sophomore eligible catcher in next year's draft class. And then Caden Cloud, who a little bit of a surprise he got as much playing time this year as he did, some of it coming with the Tyler Bell injury, but he is a guy for the 2028 class to keep an eye on with Kentucky. And then Binghamton, they've got Connor Griffin, a right-handed pitcher, probably their ace, who is a quality arm and somebody who does make it that won't be the easiest Friday night matchup for West Virginia. Ultimately, I do think that what matters in these regionals, it comes down to pitching depth oftentimes. And because of that, I'm going to go ahead and say Wake Forest does come out of the Morgantown Regional. West Virginia will be the runners up there. I think West Virginia is a very good team. I just don't think they have the depth that's needed to keep up with Wake Forest. That would end up setting up a UCLA Wake Forest super regional, and I would have UCLA getting through that to make it to the College World Series. Let's jump over to the other side of the bracket. Take a look at the number 2 overall seed. That would be the Atlanta Regional with Georgia Tech. Arguably the best, I wouldn't even say arguably, the best offense in the country. Georgia Tech went ahead and won the regular season and postseason ACC title. They end up hosting and the number 2 seed. They draw Oklahoma as a relatively difficult number 2 seed, but 3 and 4 they got favorable draws there with the Citadel and UIC, Illinois, Chicago. What will I be watching in this one? Can the up and down rotation of Oklahoma slow down this incredible Georgia Tech offense? That is going to be the big key. If Georgia Tech does get surprised and not make it through their regional, it's going to be because Oklahoma puts together a really, really good weekend from their arms. I think they have the talent to do so. There's just the inconsistency. So that'd be the key to keep an eye on. Obviously, the big name there, names of Georgia Tech, you got Von Lackey and Drew Burris, Jared Invicula, a likely first rounder, Alex Hernandez, Carson Kersey, Ryan Zuckerman, all really good bats. You got Tate McKee on the mound. So some really good prospects there for Georgia Tech. Oklahoma has Brendan Brock, Jackson Willits, Deaton Lechlane, the two Cam Johnsons, Camden and Cameron. And again, Cameron Johnson and the rest of that rotation are going to really need to show out to knock off Georgia Tech. Ultimately, I just don't think they will. Honestly, Georgia Tech got a pretty easy, pretty smooth regional, and should get through this unscathed. I'd say Oklahoma ends up being the runners-up on this one, but not real too competitive. I think Georgia Tech gets through here. Like I said, relatively. Moving on to the number 15 seed, the Lawrence Regional. Kansas is host. They've got the number 2 seed Arkansas, 3 seed Missouri State, 4 seed Northeastern. Again, I mentioned it briefly. This is one of those where Arkansas had every right to have a gripe about this one. They very well could have been hosts, but instead they head out to Kansas, and they will have something to prove, and that is not good news for those in the Lawrence Regional. Before I make the pick, to talk about the prospects. Brady Ballinger, Tyson LeBlanc, Dominic Vogel are going to be the big names for Kansas. Another long list, as is always the case with Arkansas. Gabe Gackle, Hunter Dietz, Ethan McIlvain, Carson Wiggins, Tate McGuire, good arms there. Really good bats. And Cam Kojal, a potential top 10 pick in Ryder Helfrich, TJ Pompey, Kahui Aloy, who may or may not be healthy. I have not seen the latest update on his health after leaving the SEC tournament early. Micah New, center fielder. And then they've got Cole Gibler coming out of the bullpen. He had College World Series experience last year. He's a 2027 prospect and somebody to keep an eye on there. Caden Bogenpool, he is somebody with Missouri State who has had some up and downs this year, and a really good regional could really help his draft stock. So keep an eye out for him, especially in that first game against Arkansas. That will no doubt have plenty of scouts, plenty of eyes on that one, and probably the best pitching he's going to face all weekend. That'll be really important for his draft stock. But ultimately, when it comes to picking this regional, Arkansas is going to be angry. Look out for them. Kansas, yeah, we'll go ahead and have them as a runner-up, but it's going to be Arkansas who comes out of here. Georgia Tech and Arkansas is going to be a really fun matchup, but ultimately, I do say Georgia Tech ends up getting that one and making the College Series. Now, let's head down to the number 3 seed. The Georgia Bulldogs in the Athens Regional. They end up drawing Boston College as the number 2, Liberty as the number 3, and Long Island as the 4 seed. Big storyline for me here is going to be Boston College. They went from a fringe host candidate just a couple of weeks ago to one of the lower 2 seeds. As again, they ranked out top 32. They draw Georgia, which is the 3rd seed overall. So that means it's the 3rd lowest 2 seed. Massive fall from Boston College. But if they can find their form from earlier in the season, they will be an interesting matchup. Georgia gets lucky a little bit here in that Liberty Boston College night 1. They're going to miss Ben Blair, who will most certainly go on Friday night to try and get Liberty the win in the first game 1. And that is going to be a big matchup. And like I said, really fortunate for Georgia. Ben Blair is the type of pitcher who could absolutely win a big ball game. And, Georgia has an amazing offense, but that is going to, the best arm opposite their rotation going against a different team is certainly beneficial for them. The prospects to keep an eye out for with Georgia, you got Daniel Jackson, the probably second team All American catcher, Trey Phelps, Joey Volchko, Matt Scott, Dylan Vignew, Kenny Ishikawa, Ryan Luho. Some really good names there. Boston College's top prospects to be Julio Soler. He is a 2027 prospect. I've already mentioned Ben Blair with Liberty. They've also got Tanner Marsh and Cooper Harrington for 2027. Ultimately, I think Georgia comes away with this one. The Boston College Liberty, who's going to be the runner-up? I think this is really interesting. I think who wins that first night, if Boston College can get through Ben Blair, that'll be huge for them. I think Ben Blair ends up leading Liberty to the win. I think being in the winner's bracket rather than the loser's bracket, maybe one less game matchup having to deal with that. I'm going to go ahead and say Liberty ends up being the runner-up here. I think that would be who ends up getting out of that one, or rather the runner-up in that. Opposite them in terms of that matchup, in terms of the super regional setup, that's going to be the Starkville Regional. Stark Vegas is going to be just absolutely insane as it always is. Mississippi State is the number 14 seed in the bracket. They draw Cincinnati as a 2 seed, Louisiana as a 3, and then Lipscomb as a 4. Lipscomb, just 29 wins on the year. Louisiana, part of a 5-bid Sun Belt Conference. Cincinnati, quality of the Big 12. But I really think that, in terms of double-digit seeds, Mississippi State might be got the most favorable, I should say, draw. I really think with that atmosphere, it's going to be really hard to see anybody giving them much trouble. In terms of prospects, they've got Ace Reese, Aiden Teal, Noah Sullivan. They've got a 2027 rotation, just absolutely insane with Thomas Valencius, Ryan McPherson, Duke Stone. They've got a couple of 2028s. Pitcher Jack Bauer and Jacob Parker has been really good in that lineup all year for them. Just a loaded pitching staff, a loaded lineup, a really good team there. And then you look at Cincinnati, they've got Jack Natili. He's going to be the main guy there. Louisiana has a couple of really quality arms, my favorite there being Chase Morgan. Ultimately, I think the Bulldogs advance unscathed, unbeaten, which means with just a question of who ends up coming in runner-up. We'll say Cincinnati gets through that one. I think that they're good enough to get through as the runner-up. Again, not get through, but coming in as runner-up. That messes up Cincinnati and Georgia. A quality SEC super regional, but Georgia's going to be just too much for them. Then off to the number 4 seed, which is the Auburn Regional, where Auburn draws UCF, NC State, and Milwaukee. NC State, much like Kentucky, we talked about earlier, NC State is a team who lost round 1 of their tournament, as then being the ACC tournament. Really on the bubble all throughout the weekend. Ultimately, they do get in. This could be the final run for Elliott Event. They're a long-time manager. So, who knows if that had any influence on the committee. I'm sure they would say it didn't, but it's hard to not have that human reaction there when you have a very long-term manager announcing his retirement. They get into the tournament, and this again is in Auburn at Plainsman. You've got again another great atmosphere. Auburn's going to have Chris Rembert, Eric Rivera, really good guys in the lineup. 2027 prospects: Bub Terrell, Chase Fralick. UCF has got Andrew Williamson, a guy who was a fringe first rounder at one point this year, kind of probably slid throughout the year. A good tournament could really help rise his stock. Meanwhile, NC State's got Luke Nixon, the son of Trot Nixon, Ty Head, Sherman Johnson, and then a 2027 prospect in Mikey Ryan, who I like a lot. Ultimately, I think Auburn gets through this, potentially even unbeaten. Milwaukee is, I don't think, threatening to anybody. NC State, again, I wouldn't have had them in the tournament. I'd say UCF is the runner-up in that tournament. Opposite them in terms of the setup for the Super Regional, that would be the Lincoln Regional, where Nebraska draws Ole Miss as a 2 seed, Arizona State as a 3 seed, and then South Dakota State as a 4. Brutal draw for the Huskers. They are not the favorites on DraftKings. They are actually, I believe Ole Miss is actually favored to come out of this regional. South Dakota State, Baseball America ranked them as the 64th strongest team out of the 64 in the tournament. So congratulations, Nebraska. You've got a nice matchup on Friday night. After that, you are going to have some trouble. This Ole Miss and Arizona State are really, really good teams. This is an absolute powerhouse of a regional. The first time back the regional in Lincoln in some time, and it may not go well for the Huskers. Their top prospects are a couple of pitchers in Ty Horn and Carson Jessup. Ole Miss has Kate Townsend, Hunter Elliott, Owen Kelly, Will Libbert, a couple of 2027s in Owen Pano and Hayden Federico. They've got big game experience all throughout the lineup, all throughout the rotation and the bullpen. Ole Miss is going to be a tough one. Meanwhile, Arizona State, Cole Carlone, maybe the best slider in college baseball, but he'll probably go on Friday night opposite Kate Townsend. By the way, that may be the best pitching matchup on Friday. PJ Mutsuritis, a really good position player there, and a potential Golden Spikes Award winner, Landon Hairston. Harry Bonds there with Arizona State. That is just a loaded regional. I mentioned before, pitching depth matters when it comes to these brackets. I say Ole Miss gets through. I say Arizona State is the runners-up. I do think that Nebraska ends up being third in their own regional and really the roughest go for any regional, potentially fall tournament. Up next. All right. Up next, we will go to the number 5 seed, which is North Carolina. There we go, Chapel Hill Regional. They draw Tennessee as the 2 seed, East Carolina as the 3 seed, VCU as the 4. This is a dangerous regional. North Carolina did not get an easy one here. Tennessee, obviously plenty of talent. East Carolina, plenty of experience. No team has had more tournament appearances, I believe it is. Without a trip to the College World Series at ECU. VCU, one of the more threatening 4 seeds in the tournament. This is not going to be an easy an easy one for anyone. In terms of top prospects, North Carolina's got the trio of pitchers: Jason DeCaro, Ryan Lynch, and Folger Boaz. Owen Hull and Gavin Gallagher in their lineup. Tennessee has Bo Rudy, Brandon Arvidsson, Tegan Coons as draft-eligible arms this year. Cameron Appenzeller pitched, had a big assignment in the SEC tournament. He's a 2028 eligible. Tennessee's got Henry Ford in the lineup. They've got Reese Chapman in the lineup. Trent Grinlinger, J.A. Abernathy, and Levi Clark, all 2027s. just a loaded team there. East Carolina, Ethan Norby can win a ball game against anybody when he gets the bump. He's on the bump. I think that's going to be a really interesting, really fun matchup on Friday night against Tennessee. Brandon Burris, quality bat for 2027. Sean Jenkins coming out of the bullpen. East Carolina's a really good squad there. Who do I think wins it? I think whoever wins that Friday night game, East Carolina, Tennessee, gets through and wins the tournament. I'm sorry, not the tournament, the regional. So I do think that matchup is the big one. That's going to be the decider. That said, I think it's Tennessee. And I actually don't think the loser ends up being the runner-up. I think North Carolina holds off and is the runner-up in the regional. But I say Tennessee gets through that Chapel Hill regional. Taking a look at it, I'm sorry, I did realize I forgot to pick that Auburn and Ole Miss Super Regional. I'd say Auburn gets the College Series out of that. The line, matchup with Tennessee coming out of Chapel Hill. Who would they line up against in terms of the Super Regional? It is the College Station Regional with the number 12 seed Texas A&M Aggies. They draw a tough 2 seed in USC, Southern California. They got Texas State as a 3 seed and Lamar as a 4. I know that a lot of the metrics weren't favorable for USC, but I thought they had a case to be a host. They really weren't all that close in the end. As you can see here, lineup is against a 12 seed, so they weren't all that close per the committee. But I really did think that they had a case to be made. That said, I mean the Ball 5 chant in Texas in College Station is as good, as much fun as there is in college baseball, and no matter how many different locations try to replicate it, you just can't. That is a really tough atmosphere. But they're facing a really good USC staff. Texas State is no slouch. Lamar solid. Prospect-wise, you got to look at Caden Sorrell, Chris Hakopian, Gavin Grahovic, all potential first-round picks this coming summer in July. Bear Harrison, Clayton Freshcorn, Shane Sadeo, then the 2027s of Terrence Keel and Boston Kellner. Some 2028, the physicality of Jorian Wilson. Nico Partita, it looks like there was news that he will be healthy and ready to go. So that'll be big for Texas A&M. And they're going up against that staff of Mason Edwards, who was metrically one of the best, if not the best pitchers in all of college baseball. Grant Govil, a quality arm. Maximo Martinez, a good 2027 prospect. Gavin Lawrenson had some good appearances this year as well, as he's a 2028 prospect. I think the USC is absolutely capable of pushing this. I think this maybe go to a Monday, to a Game 7 in this regional. The Texas A&M comes out of it. USC, the runners-up, giving it a pretty low ranked as far as the seedings, super regional. And I think that Texas A&M, being the host in that super regional, would get them through to the College World Series. Next up is the Austin Regional with the 6 seed Texas Longhorns. Brutal draw having UCSB in here. We'll talk about that in a moment. It has a 2 seed, Tarleton State as the 3, and Holy Cross as the 4 seed. Now, when does Jackson Flora throw? Does he throw on, do they save him for Saturday? Do they feel they can get through Tarleton State without throwing Jackson Flora? I think they can. That sets up Flora against Texas on Saturday. Assuming, of course, Texas gets through Holy Cross, which they should with these. That could be massive. Jackson Flora against Texas would be must-watch baseball. It would be to go to 2-0 in the regional, send potentially Texas, if Florida gets that win, to just one game away from being eliminated. That could be huge. That could give UCSB a chance to get through this regional, and that would be something to really keep an eye on. Texas is loaded with prospects. Carson Tinney, catcher. They got, in terms of arms, they've also got Nathan Mendoza in the lineup. Adrian Rodriguez, a quality 2027 prospect. Anthony Pack Jr., who's been starting since day one. He's a 2028 prospect in the outfield there. As far as arms go, Ruger Riojas, Thomas Burns, Dylan Volantis, one of the better 2027 arms. You got Brett Crossland, Michael Winter, Winter at 2028, Crossland at 2027 prospect. Some good prospects there for Texas. UCSB, I think this will be the second year in a row the top pitcher in the draft comes out of UCSB. Last year, Tyler Bremner. This year, Jackson Flora. They got Cole Triba, Calvin Prosky, Nathan Estevez, Jonathan Mendez. So there's a bat here as well. Josh Giannicelli is a 2028 arm who struggles with consistency some, but I think he has a great future and could be the next great UCSB arm. That is, again, I've talked about it before, and I'm going to say it again. The importance of depth of arms is huge in a regional. Texas has a ton of arms. UCSB has a ton of arms. This will be a great matchup. Ultimately, as dangerous as I think UCSB is, and as much as I think that if Florida goes on Saturday, they could truly put Texas into a loser's bracket. I think Texas does get through the Austin Regional with UCSB as the runner-up. Opposite them, in terms of the Super Regional draw, would be Eugene. The Oregon Ducks draw Oregon State, Washington State, and Yale. Fascinating regional. I love this. Pac-12 After Dark lives on. We're back. Oregon State, Washington State, all former Pac-12 members. Oregon on Friday night, likely to face Jack Oman, the star pitcher for Yale, who did not have the massive numbers and the great numbers that he had a year ago, but is still a really talented pitcher and not somebody to sleep on. And there's Ivy League teams are always just a nightmare in the regionals. They always compete. They always push hosts and keep it tight late. It seems every single year. I don't think this year's any different. It's just an incredibly fun matchup. This entire regional is just an absolute blast. I love it. If Oregon State had, let me go through the prospects real quick. Oregon got Maddox Maloney, Drew Smith, Berkeley Mabius, Cal Scolari for 2026. Will Sanford, a quality 2027 prospect. And then Braden Jackson and Anhalaya as 2028 prospects. Oregon State have Eric Segura and Ethan Kleinschmidt in their rotation. They do not have Dax Whitney, and that's the key. Dax Whitney is out with elbow surgery. He will not pitch. He may not pitch next year. We'll cross that bridge next year. But no Dax Whitney, a genuine ace in college baseball. Him not being in here, I think, impacts the winner of this regional. And the battle for Oregon ends up going to Oregon, with Oregon State coming as runners-up. But I think overall, this regional will be the one to keep an eye on. It's a West Coast, so it'll be one of those late-night ones. It has got great matchups, rivalries, scrappy Ivy League team, Pac-12 After Dark. Couldn't ask for anything more than that one. It is just an absolute blast. That is going to be so much fun to watch. Definitely keep an eye out for that one. Just going to be a ton of fun. Oregon gets through that. And then the Super Regional, I think Texas knocks off Oregon. As we go up to the number 7 seed, which is going to be the Tuscaloosa Regional, as Alabama gets that one. They face Oklahoma State as the 2 seed. South Carolina Upstate as the 3. and then Alabama State as the 4. The storyline to keep an eye on is Justin LeBron. What does he do? Can he reestablish himself as a top 10, top 5 prospect in this year's draft? Had another rough year against the SEC. His defense took some steps back. Still incredibly talented, but the consistency and the numbers just aren't there. Some real questions. What can he do in this region? Along with Justin LeBron, Alabama prospect-wise has Brady Neal, Tyler Faye, Zane Adams, and they've got Eric Hines, a power bat. He was a 2028 prospect. Oklahoma State has Hudson Barrett, Colin Ritchie for this year, Ethan Lund to 2027, and then Remo Indomenico and Sebastian Norman as 2028 prospects. Some quality in Hines and Norman, a couple of really good power bats for the 2028 class. Get an early look at some of them that maybe a lot of fans haven't had a chance to see yet. Ultimately, who wins this one? I think Alabama just has enough, especially in that rotation. Oklahoma State's runner-up. This one was pretty darn easy for me. It was pretty straightforward for me there. So I got Alabama winning it. Oklahoma State runner-up. Their lineup against the Tallahassee Regional, where Florida State draws Coastal Carolina, Northern Illinois, and St. John's. What does Coastal Carolina do on Friday night? Much like we talked about with UCSB, do they hold Jacksonville, Florida? Does Coastal Carolina hold Cam Fluke? Does Florida State run Wes Mendez out on Friday night? Or do they, and Trey Beard on Saturday? Do they move that around? We'll have to wait and see there. But there's some great pitching matchup potentials here. The potential Cam Fluke against either Wes Mendez or Trey Beard on Saturday would be a great watch. Two really good pitchers, no matter which one starts for Florida State. If Cam Fluke is in that one, got to tune in for that. Top prospects, Miles Bailey is still out with Florida State. So you got Wes Mendez and Trey Beard, as I mentioned. Braden Dowd in the outfield, Hunter Carnes as the catcher. Coastal Carolina's got Cam Fluke and Ross Norman. They got, Hayden Johnson. He's out for the year as well. So there's that. I'm not going to say it's a perk, a positive to Coastal Carolina's season, but the fact that they did lose Hayden Johnson, I believe it was before the season started, Cam Fluke so early and they missed so much of the season. A team that was in the College World Series runners-up last year, plenty of players got experience last year. This year, people got run in the rotation, on the weekend rotation, that normally wouldn't. So there's more experience there than they expected coming into this postseason. And that can be dangerous. In Coastal Carolina, we know not to count them out. They're a former national champion. They were in the College World Series last year. Ultimately, though, I think Florida State just does hold them off. Florida State gets through. Coastal as the runner-up, setting up a Florida State-Alabama Super Regional, where I say Alabama gets through that one. As you can see here, that would set up a Georgia Tech, Alabama, Texas, and Georgia on one side of the College World Series bracket. Now, the next regional is going to be the Gainesville Regional, where Florida hosts Miami, Troy, and Rider. Troy, on the bubble, on the outside looking in the last 2 years. They are not this year. They get through here. And who knows? Do they take 2 years of frustration out on Florida and Miami? Who have their own rivalry, focusing on one another. Really good. I think it'll be a really fun matchup to watch, a really fun regional with Florida, Miami, Troy. Rider's solid, but of course, that 4 seed, I don't think they consider them all that threatening. Although they lost less than 20 games on the year, so they're obviously a quality team. Prospect-wise, Florida's got Liam Peterson. and Luke McNeely as arms for 2026. Ethan Serwick and Kyle Jones as bats. They've got potentially the 1-1 pick next year in Brendan Lawson, while they have Aiden King, their Friday night starter, and Jackson Barbary and Josh Rittenauer, some really good arms, both 2026 class and 2027 class. Lawson got hot early in the SEC tournament. If he stays hot, look out for that. Daniel Cuvée, a top prospect for Miami, unlikely to play. I do believe they officially announced he will not play this weekend in Tallahassee. So Alex Sosa is going to be their star bat. Dylan Dubovic, the 2028 prospect, quality arm there for Miami. For Troy, Ben Stubbs, a good arm. Jimmy Janicki, one of the top catchers for the 2027 class. When it comes to Florida, there's inconsistency. There seems to always be inconsistency with Florida, but their upside is just massive. I mean, they are a College World Series national championship caliber talent team if they can put it all together. So look out for them. I think they get through Gainesville. I actually think the runner-up, I think that Friday night with Ben Stubbs on the mound, I think Troy gets through Miami and ends up being the runner-up in that region. And that sets up our final regional, which is Hattiesburg. Southern Miss, they draw Virginia as the 2, Jacksonville State as the 3, and Little Rock as the 4. Jacksonville State has every right to be upset they were not a 2 seed. And while they can be upset they weren't a 2 seed, it may have actually worked in their favor. But if they had been deemed a 2 seed, they'd probably be in LA against UCLA. Instead, they go to Southern Miss, and one of the easier regionals to be an upset. I think this ended up working out really well for Jacksonville State. Southern Miss has got Camden Clark on the mound for 2027. Virginia has Eric Becker, who stuck around after the coaching changes. And then, obviously brought in a bunch of the Duke guys with AJ Grassi and Kyle Johnson. They got Sam Harris there, Joe Tiroli, Aiden Harris, 2027 prospect. Look out for Bo Burns and Eli Pillsbury for Jacksonville State. The best 3-man rotation in this regional, for me, is Jacksonville State. I've said pitching depth matters, rotation matters. They get 3 really good outings from all 3 of their starters. Jacksonville State can come out of this regional. That's exactly what I think happens. I think Jacksonville State comes out of it. Southern Miss, tight one against Virginia as the runner-up. Jacksonville State against Florida. I think the Gators get back to Omaha. Now, bracket 1, I think this works out pretty favorably for UCLA, with Florida, Texas A&M, and Auburn. UCLA gets the title. I think Auburn is the runner-up there. This is brutal in bracket 2 with Georgia Tech, Alabama, Texas, and Georgia. I think the 2 Georgia teams end up being the 2 that are going head-to-head to make it to the College World Series final. I'll say Georgia Tech edges out Georgia for the title for top player of top team in Georgia. UCLA Georgia Tech would be absolutely amazing College World Series. College World Series final. I think it might be a toss-up if you go through. I think Georgia Tech might actually be the favorite if this were to come to fruition. It would all come down to is Logan Redmond healthy. Hopefully by then he is. I would say UCLA in a tight game 3 gets through there. And I say ultimately UCLA run the table, start of the season, end of the season, national champions. UCLA is your national champions this year. That's my prediction. But of course, this will all be jumbled up by the time we record next week. Next week, we'll go ahead and talk about the Super Regionals, recap the Regionals, preview it from there. Make sure you keep an eye on, go to threequarterslot.com, check out our draft ranks, purchase that draft guide, ton of great information there. Do some mock drafts on the mock draft simulator. All of that is there. We've got numerous reports going up every single day, so make sure you tune in, check that out. But with that, this has been the Three Quarter Slot Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Kernahan, and we will talk to you again